Not making enough income is one of the heaviest burdens a human being can carry. And for those born into lower-class families or even below that level, the struggle is far more than just financial. It is emotional, mental, spiritual, and generational. Because money in this world is not just paper or numbers on a screen. It is survival, stability, opportunity, and the difference between being able to breathe freely or living every day with a knot of anxiety in your chest, wondering if tomorrow will finally break you. When you don't make enough, life feels like a game you were forced into but started 10 moves behind. And no matter how hard you try, the finish line always seems to get pushed further away, leaving you chasing after peace that never fully arrives. Bills don't stop coming, responsibilities don't disappear, and society doesn't pause to give you time to catch up. Instead, the world demands more and more from you, while giving you less and less, and that constant imbalance keeps you stressed from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep. If you can even sleep at all, with so many worries running through your mind. Being born from a lower-class family means you already grew up watching the sacrifices your parents made just to survive, seeing them stretch pennies into meals, going without things other kids took for granted, hearing the arguments over money late at night, and feeling the weight of unspoken fears about losing the home, the car, the electricity, or the chance to pursue education because the cost was always too high. That upbringing doesn't just affect your childhood, it follows you into adulthood, shaping how you see work, how you see opportunity, and how you define success. And even when you finally begin earning your own income, if it is not enough to escape that cycle, the stress only multiplies. It feels unfair because it is unfair. The world doesn't hand out opportunities equally, and when you are born into poverty, you are forced to work 10 times harder just to stand in the same place as someone who started life with advantages and resources you could only dream of. Not making enough income means constantly choosing between needs that should never be negotiable. Food or medicine, rent or gas, paying the electric bill, or buying school supplies for your children. And those choices eat away at your dignity, making you feel powerless, stuck, and left behind in a world that seems to only reward those who already have more than enough. The stress isn't just about numbers. It's about the fear of one emergency destroying everything you've worked for, the car breaking down, a medical bill you can't cover, a sudden rent increase, or even losing a job that wasn't paying enough to begin with, but was at least keeping the lights on. This constant state of survival mode keeps you on edge, unable to relax, unable to dream, unable to plan long term. Because when you don't make enough, every single day is about making it to the next one, and that pressure builds up like a storm inside you, creating anxiety, depression, irritability, and even resentment toward a world that never seems fair. For men and women born from lower-class families, this stress is magnified by the generational weight of expectations. You want to break free, to build something better, to escape the struggles your parents and grandparents went through, but without enough income, those dreams feel like chains instead of wings, keeping you grounded in the same struggles you promised yourself you would escape. And the cruelest part of all is that society often blames the poor for being poor, as if not making enough income is a sign of laziness or failure, when in reality it is often the hardest working people, the ones working multiple jobs, sacrificing sleep and giving up personal joys, who still can catch a break, because wages match the cost of living. Opportunities aren't evenly distributed, and the system is tilted against those who start at the bottom. Stress becomes your companion. You carry it in your shoulders, in your back, in your chest, in the way you breathe, in the way you sleep, in the way you snap at loved ones when the pressure becomes too much. And even when you try to stay positive, the reality of struggling to make enough money overshadows your optimism like a cloud blocking the sun. Not making enough income doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. Your relationships suffer because you are too stressed to be fully present. Your children feel the tension, even if you try to hide it. Your friendships weaken because you can't afford to socialize. And your dreams get put on hold again and again, until you wonder if they will ever come true. It becomes a cycle. Stress from lack of money leads to health problems. Health problems create more expenses. Expenses create more stress. And round it goes until you feel trapped in a maze with no exit. And what makes it worse is that being born into a lower-class family means you are not just dealing with your own struggles, you are often carrying the struggles of your family too. Helping parents, siblings, or extended relatives who also can't make enough, and while you love them, that extra weight only deepens. your own stress, because you barely have enough for yourself, let alone for others. But love doesn't let you turn your back. So you keep giving, keep sacrificing, keep pushing forward, even when it feels like the world is asking you to give blood from a stone. This is why not making enough income is so much more than a financial problem. It is a constant, gnawing, exhausting cycle of stress, worry, sacrifice, and survival, especially when you were born into it, because you don't just deal with poverty, you inherit it, and unless something drastic changes, you risk passing it on to the next generation as well. Not making enough income slowly reshapes your entire mental health. And sometimes you don't even realize it until you step back and see how far you've changed under the weight of financial stress. The constant worrying rewires your brain. You wake up with racing thoughts about bills, fall asleep calculating numbers in your head, and during the day, every small expense feels like a mountain you have to climb. Anxiety creeps in not as an occasional visitor, but as a permanent resident, whispering in your ear that no matter how hard you work, you'll never get ahead. Depression follows close behind, fueled by the hopelessness of watching your dreams crumble each time reality demands another sacrifice. You might have once dreamed of starting a business, traveling the world, pursuing a career in something meaningful, or even just buying a house to feel stable. But when income isn't enough, those dreams get postponed again and again, until they feel impossible, and the hopelessness becomes heavier than any unpaid bill. Broken dreams are perhaps the cruelest side effect of poverty, just because they remain unfulfilled, but because you watch other people, sometimes less talented or less hardworking, achieve them simply because they had the financial means you lacked. You want to be happy for them, but inside, resentment brews, not necessarily toward them personally, but toward the unfair system that rewards some with endless chances, while leaving others struggling to survive. And if you come from a lower-class family, this stress is magnified by the invisible pressure of wanting to be the one who breaks the cycle. You don't just want success for yourself, you want it for your parents who sacrificed, for your siblings who look up to you, for your children who deserve better. That pressure weighs on you like an anchor, because every time you fail to make enough, you feel like you're letting everyone down. Even simple family interactions become layered with stress. Birthdays, holidays, graduations, occasions that should be filled with joy instead become reminders of what you can't afford to give, what you wish you could do but can't, what your family deserves, but will have to go without once again. The silence that falls when someone mentions money in a struggling household is deafening. You feel shame, guilt, and inadequacy all at once, even when you know deep down it isn't your fault. Society often paints the picture that if you just work harder, things will improve. But anyone born from lower class families knows the truth. Working hard doesn't always equal earning enough, and sometimes the hardest workers are the ones stuck in the worst situations. Low-income families rarely get the luxury of rest, and without rest, your body starts to deteriorate. The stress becomes physical tightness in your chest, headaches from lack of sleep, fatigue from working 2 or 3 jobs, back pain from labor that pays too little, and the slow breakdown of your health, because when you don't make enough income, even going to the doctor feels like a luxury. You tell yourself you'll get checked out later, but later never comes, and the untreated health issues pile up until they become impossible to ignore. Financial stress also seeps into relationships with loved ones. Arguments over money are one of the leading causes of breakups and divorces, and when income isn't enough, tension grows like a fire that refuses to die down. You argue over who's spending too much, who's not contributing enough, who made the wrong decision, and those arguments cut deeper when both people know the real problem isn't each other, but the financial reality they are trapped in. Children growing up in these homes absorb that stress like sponges. They notice the arguments, the sighs, the sacrifices, and even if you never tell them the full story, they know something is wrong. This passes on generational anxiety. Kids learn from a young age that life is unstable, that money is a constant source of stress, and that dreams are often out of reach. And perhaps the hardest part of not making enough income is the isolation it creates. When you don't have enough, you can't go out with friends as much, can't afford the social activities that others do, can't travel, can't join in on events that cost money, and eventually, you start pulling away not because you don't care about people, but because it's embarrassing to keep saying, "I can't afford it." That isolation deepens the stress, turning it into loneliness, and loneliness makes the struggle even harder to bear. Over time, the cycle of stress, anxiety, broken dreams, and social isolation creates a feeling that life is just a grind with no reward. You wake up, work hard, struggle to pay bills, argue, sacrifice, and repeat, and the longer it continues, the more hopeless it feels. And yet, what makes it even more devastating is the quiet shame society places on you for not making enough, as though it is a personal failure rather than a structural issue. That shame silences people, making them less likely to ask for help, less likely to share their struggles, and more likely to suffer in silence. When you are born into a lower-class family, not making enough income doesn't just affect your present, it shapes your entire worldview. You learn to see opportunities not as guarantees but as rare miracles. You approach every purchase with hesitation. You hesitate to take risks because you cannot afford failure. And you live with a constant fear of losing what little you have. This fear controls decisions, limits possibilities, and traps you in a cycle that feels almost impossible to escape. Even when small successes come, the fear of losing them is stronger than the joy of gaining them. Because deep down you know how fragile everything is when money is scarce. That's why the stress never really leaves, it becomes part of who you are, a shadow that follows you everywhere, reminding you that until you make enough, peace will always be just out of reach.